All right, Hare Krishna. Welcome. This is the third installment, three of four, and unconditional love. And this time, and this time, and the next time, we're going to take a look at how we can begin to move in that direction of the kind of love that we heard about last time, Krishna's idea of unconditional love, and the kind of unconditional love we've been given an invitation to participate in by Krishna, and then even more recently by Lord Chaitanya. And so let's take a look at how that can happen. Some of the things that will help us hopefully to move in that direction from where we're sitting right now. We're uh, kind of far away from that, but what can we do? What are some things that are important? And so one thing we're going to talk about here is there's kind of two angles of vision in Krishna. You can emphasize two different things on him, and these two things really can't fully be separated, but they're important. Two aspects that one can be emphasized more than the other, and it is Krishna's greatness, or his majesty, as we say, his Aishvarya, and then his sweetness, or his Madhurya. He's got these two aspects. They're both in him, fully, actually. He's the sweetest, as sweet as it gets, and he's as great as it gets. So he really has them in fullness. But the devotees, even the eternal devotees, his will emphasize one or the other. And there's all these different mixtures. As we can look here at what this is from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, where Prabhupada says, in general, attachment to Krishna is of two kinds. The first kind is attachment with awe and veneration. So the greatness is prominent, characterized by a lack of freedom. Such attachment is exhibited in Mathura and on the Vaikuntha planets. In these abodes of the Lord, the flavor of transcendental loving service is restricted. But in Gokula, Vrindavan, love is freely exchanged, and although the cowherd boys and damsels of Vrindavan know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they do not show awe and veneration because of the great intimacy of their relationship with him through thick and thin. So even with persons with Krishna prema, if they're in Mathura or Vaikuntha, there's a little bit stronger understanding of Krishna's greatness. They understand he's God and they're not. And so there's a natural, legitimate respect for him that way. And we heard that in Dwarka, they switch back and forth. And also sometimes in Mathura. That and in other even in Hastinapur you have that too, where Arjuna in the Gita, when he sees the universal form, he says, "Oh, Krishna, I've been treating you like you're my friend, now I see who you are, you know." And so it flips from one to the other, and so throughout the material and spiritual worlds, you have devotees with different proportions of the two. And then we heard that in Vrindavan, there still is knowledge of that, but it's in the background and it doesn't interrupt the sweet dealings. In one sense, it enhances it. So in the other places, the knowledge of the greatness makes you keep a respectful distance to some degree. Where in Vrindavan, still the greatness is in the background, and we'll see is an essential element, actually, for even for that rasa. You never forget you never totally eliminate the greatness, even in that level. Okay. And then this is from the Chaitanya Shikshamrita from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He talks about devotional service. He says, according to their condition of life, people attempt to please the Lord for four reasons: from fear, from desire for material enjoyment, and from sense of duty or gratitude, or from genuine attraction. Right. So the first two, fear and desire for material enjoyment, that's coming from Bhagavad Gita 7:16, right? The four do-gooders who come to Krishna, ones who perform pious deeds. And that one of them, wants something material, they need something and they want it. And there's people that are suffering from something and want to get rid of it. So the fear is not fear of the Lord, but fear of their circumstances. So they need to be rid of, they're sick, they have, have some kind of problem they want the Lord to solve. So those are those, that's called mixed bhakti. Your main thing is to get that from the Lord. And then he says you can have a sense of duty or gratitude. And I see the gratitude to be like a little sweeter form of duty. Like duty can be, when Prabhupada tells us, that our dharma is to serve. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He's the one who is served, and we are the ones who do that. And that's just the reality. That's just what it is. And if we do anything else, we're actually denying reality, right? And that's just kind of straight duty. Okay, this is my position in life. And then genuine attraction it's called raga, and that's where the attraction to Krishna, his sweetness, is really very spontaneous. We're going to talk a lot more about that next time when we focus on more on the sweetness. We're going to focus more on the greatness this time, and so there's those okay, and so yeah, so those who worship the Lord out of a feeling of gratitude are motivated by a sense of duty. He says this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So even that is, because the Lord has done things for you, or we feel indebted to Him. That's it's a sweeter kind of duty in my mind than just that He's the boss and we're not. This is because you have a real sense of doing it, so it's sweetened the pot a little bit, but still there's a strong motivation of duty there, and not so much a powerful attraction. And then he says, those people who naturally gain satisfaction in worshiping the Lord without motives of fear, desire, or duty engage in worship with attraction or raga. And that can actually apparently happen from early on. In the Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he says that when he describes the first two leaves of the bhakti creeper, it's a dicotyledonous plant. It has two little immature leaves, not one, like grass has one. They have two. And he says, on the top surface of the leaf, it's very smooth, and underneath you have the veins. So it's a little rough. And so he says the underside part where he says they're both effective, but the one on the lower side that's a little rougher, that's the he says the abode of the king called Vaiti. Right, the rules and regulations, Vaidhi Bhakti, and the top one is the king, is smooth. It's the king of raga, was somehow maybe could be from past lives. They have this kind of spontaneous attraction for Krishna. Okay, and but what he says also, he says, as long as we don't have that raga, then we have to follow the vidhi. You can't pretend on that. Okay, so we're going to focus today on the greatness part. And it's really more important than you might think. When we hear about how the gopis and Mother Yashoda are all about the sweetness, we may think, okay, forget about the greatness. We're going to find out that's not a good idea. We'll never get there if we do that. We don't have a prayer to get there if we don't do that. Both because it's still integrated into the actual relationship, even in the spiritual world, and it's also crucial in two really important aspects: the ability to allow us to really surrender to Krishna, to feel protected by Him, and the ability to be steady faith, a steady practice to control the mind and senses. It's absolutely necessary for that. And so otherwise we'll stay in the unsteady realm forever if we don't incorporate this. We just try to ride the sweetness, because if we're unsteady, because right, it says that the purpose of sadhana, right, is to always remember Krishna and never forget Him. And so if you don't understand that there's this particular type of the greatness here that's most important, and if we don't have that, we'll keep forgetting Krishna. And so just like if you turn a lamp off and on, off and on, off and on, you can't develop very much a deeper attraction. So even if you think you're overcome with Krishna's sweetness, then you forgot Him. Right? Oh, then yeah, remember Him again. You can't get there. So we're going to see how and why that is. And so I took this. It's kind of an extended quote from the first chapter of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, where Prabhupada really lays this out. It's really quite extraordinary. And he says the word shama means controlling the mind and keeping it from being diverted in various ways while fixing it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the remembering and not forgetting. Okay? In other words, one whose mind is fixed on the Supreme Lord is situated on the Shama platform. On that platform, the devotee understands, and this is the part of his greatness that's really going to be important here. It says, on that platform, the devotee understands that Krishna is the basic principle of everything within our experience. And then he quotes the Bhagavad Gita 7:19. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 19. After many, many births of cultivating knowledge, one who has attained real knowledge surrenders unto Vasudeva Krishna because he can understand that Krishna is present in everything, that he is distributed all over the cosmic manifestation. And then here is the translation of the verse he's quoting. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. In Prabhupada, the cause of all causes is kind of a purportful part of the translation. He's sarvamati. It's all me. Vasudevam sarvamati. That's what they realize. It's all Krishna. There's nothing, it's our philosophy, right? That Krishna he's unique, but everything that exists, including existence itself, is Krishna. It's part of him. Right? So then Prabhupada continues with this. It's the same section in the chapter 1 of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It says, it is stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the platform of Shama, on which one understands that Krishna is the basic principle of everything, is the same as Shantarati, or the Ashantaras. Right? This remains a part of our eternal relationship with Krishna. So he says, unless one is elevated to the platform of Shantarati, one cannot be fixed in knowledge of the greatness of Krishna or of the diffusion of his different energies, which are the cause of all manifestations. So this is not just like a beginner's understanding that Vasudevam Sarvamati, everything is Krishna, right? But that is the basis of having us have this Shantarati, which is which Prabhupada will explain even further here in the same quote. He says, one who can fix his mind on Krishna without deviation, again, not remembering, not forgetting, attains Shantarasa, Rasa Rati, same, the steadfast position in Krishna consciousness. One in the Shantarasa exhibits two main qualities. And these are important ones: unflinching faith in Krishna and the cessation of all material desires. Absolutely essential if we want to advance in Krishna consciousness. So it's the basis for this, is understanding Krishna's all-pervasiveness. These, and he probably even repeats it, right? It says, these specific characteristics of Shantarasa, unflinching faith in Krishna and cessation of all desires not connected with Krishna, he immediately repeats it, are common to all other rasas as well. Just as sound is present not only in the sky where it is produced, but also in all the other elements, air, fire, water, and earth. Prabhupada's using the example of the creation, right? When the creation first happens, there's ether, which has sound, right? Then the next element is air, which has sound and touch. And then the next element is fire, sound, touch, form. Water adds taste, and earth adds smell. And so in the rasas, the first one is Shantarasa. And there, the overwhelming understanding of Krishna's grandeur and majesty makes the devotee feel like, how can they serve him? He has everything, and I'm so tiny. And so there's more just like, wow. It's a wow experience. And so there's not a lot of active service there. But that is present, just like it starts out sound with the creation. It's present when you add dasya. When the service attitude comes in, there's still behind that the appreciation of of Krishna's majesty and the firm faith and the lack of desires. And then we've added some sweetness, and so then there's there's an ability to serve. And then in friendship, there's still the first two things. There's the firm faith and remembrance of Krishna, and the cessation of all other desires. And there's feeling of service, and then there's friendship. Right. Next thing you add, parental love has all the other previous things, and the same thing with romantic love, madhurya rasa. So this shama or shanti that comes about from really integrating the notion of Krishna's all pervadingness, in one sense, remains an integral part of our devotion, even to the highest levels. It's essential for us to reach any kind of meaningful level. And then it remains an essential component of rasa at the end of the journey. So it's really, really important. And I know for devotees, I remember when I first was reading the Bhagavatam, it keeps talking about the creation. It's like so many different creation accounts. And I'm thinking, when do I get to hear what it's like in the spiritual world? And so I didn't understand, why they keep emphasizing the creation and the universal form and all this kind of stuff, because we need to know that to be able to move in the direction of the spiritual realm. So yeah, for both our immediate growth and our future ability to be situated in rasa, we need to understand how Krishna is present everywhere. So this particular aspect of his greatness is really, really important to us as sadhakas. It's just super important. Can't be overemphasized, it seems. So let's look a little bit where Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita quite a bit. Actually, he talks in the 7th and 9th chapter, and so he says, I'll conquer of wealth in Bhagavad Gita 7:7. There is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on the thread. And that's really emphasizing his all pervasiveness. Like he's not just creating stuff and now it's separate from him, right? But everything that exists is resting upon it's his power of existence, the sat potency. It's like for us, if we build something, we create something, it's separate from us. And you have people that create art or architecture. They're dead, and the architecture is still there, or the art is still there. If Krishna disappears, everything else disappears because he's the power of existence itself. They have no independent power of existence. So everything that's existing is resting on the sat potency, the existence potency of Krishna. If he doesn't exist, no sat potency, no nothing else. It's gone. And so there isn't. Prabhupada uses the example in the first purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, where he compares Krishna to like being the soul of the universe. Because there is, of course, the super soul. Even there's Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, who's the super soul in all beings. There's Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who's the soul of the universe. And then there's Karnadakashaya Vishnu, who's the super soul of all the material creation. All right. So in one sense, it's true. And he says, just like the embodied in the material body, the soul in the material body is aware of what's going on in that body. In the same way, Krishna, as the soul of the universe, is aware of everything that goes on. Because one of the things that Krishna described in that first verse is he's directly and indirectly cognizant of all manifestations. So he's actually directly cognizant in that way. Just like we have the souls in our body, and the soul can be conscious of what's happening with our body. So Krishna can be conscious of all the material manifestations. It's like an external body to him, and he can be just as aware of that. It's just as easily as we can be aware of our own bodies. And then he says, by me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Right. So he remains also himself. He's not carrying them around inside his belly. He's free to dance and do whatever he wants, but it's in his existence. Right. So they're in his existence, just like they're resting on his existence, they're in his existence, but not his personal existence. Prabhupada says he's not like he's like pictures of Atlas holding the earth on his back. It says in one of the purports. And he makes it even more clear. He says, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me, like my own personal form. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. So again, he's, this doesn't slow him down as Krishna. He can dance, he can steal butter, having all these universes, resting on him or that kind of stuff. It's not, it's not on his back, on his shoulders. It's not a problem. He, his energies take care of that, but they're, intrinsic parts of him still. And then he says, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in me, the sky, always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. Right. So there's no space, space, time, everything else is part of Krishna. He's not, he seems to be in space and go through time, but time and space are his energies. He's not not within them. He can do whatever he wants with them. He can change them. He's completely independent. Um, so when you hear about this, Krishna is the all powerful and controlling everything and creating and everything's resting on him. He's also the Ishvara Parama Krishna, supreme controller, and the cause of all causes. Now, how we feel about that, is going to depend a lot about what we think of Krishna, right? Because I mean, many times, especially you have religions that are based on fear. You have some particular, usually there's some pretty heavy versions of Christianity that really emphasize eternal damnation and all this kind of stuff. And so God is kind of like the very strict taskmaster. You may get rewarded if you behave yourself. Otherwise, there can be eternal damnation. Do what you're told or else. And I mean, if it's true, I guess it probably can be frightening, but it doesn't make you that happy about the situation. Do you need to have somebody who's all powerful, who's kind of mean? It's like, well, great. We're the little creation. We don't mean anything, and we're nobodies. And this guy's just watching our every move and waiting to stick it to us, like the big boss, the big tyrant. Great. We wish that he wasn't all pervasive and we could get away with some things. So that's just why some sweetness kind of has to come in, or at least some knowledge that he's not mean. At least there's a neutral situation. And so if we're only thinking of Krishna's greatness and we are not afraid that he's mean, then it becomes kind of the dutiful thing, right? That he is the supreme, and we're meant to be the servants. And if he's a decent guy, that's kind of okay, because he's kind of he's a nice master and that kind of stuff, and he provides for us, and it's okay. I can accept that, but it's not like something that is really you necessarily approach with great eagerness. But you accept the reality, and it's okay, So that's kind of a dutiful thing, and you have that. But there isn't a lot of life to that kind of thing, to that kind of a notion. So, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and we are his eternal servants, and I mean, it's true, but what happens if we have the proper conception, it's like really joyful. It's like the most joyful thing imaginable. And Krishna, of course, it's not just a one-way street, as we find out. We heard last time how Prabhupada says that Krishna becomes the devotee of his devotees. So it's a reciprocal loving relationship. So it's quite that bland. So it's really actually, if we understand the sweetness, it's much better than just that kind of statement. So if we add a little bit more sweetness, so we go from at least in the beginning, we have to know that he's not evil, or he's not a bad guy, he's okay. But if we add a little bit of sweetness, then you get some, like, a little. It's still dutiful, but it's a little sweeter when you have some gratitude, when you feel, wow, he's doing something for us. So you see that, we find that here in the 15th chapter of the Gita. And the splendor of the sun, the text 12, the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. And Prabhupada says in the purport, it's a nice purport. He says, the moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. Without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. Says these are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Right? So you think, wow, he's looking out for us, He's there, he's all pervaded, but he's giving us these things. And they're nice, they're all really nice things. He's thinking about us. So there's a little gratitude. He's not just sitting up there and demanding service. He's doing some things for us. And that continues in the next verse. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. And Prabhupada says in this purport, he says, it is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. So he's arranging these things. And then 14th, he gets even really down to earth here. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. And Prabhupada says, therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. He says, unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. So we can again think a little bit more favorably about Krishna. He's kind to us. He's thinking about us. He's hooking us up. He's conscious of these things. He says, "I'm doing this for you." Right? It's not just random. He says, "I'm actually doing this." It's an intentional thing he's doing for us, Krishna, because he's speaking here. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So it's something he's arranged and set up. So now, what if we go a little further? Right. So that makes it a little sweeter. You think, okay, he's really nice actually, and he's supplying us all these things we need, and if anybody else supply it helps us out in many ways, we naturally can be grateful and maybe want to reciprocate in some ways. But let's go a little further, add a little bit more sweetness to that. And here in 918, Krishna says, I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and annihilation, the basis of everything, and the resting place and the eternal seed. So, particularly the abode, refuge, and the most dear friends are really powerful things here. All the other things too are majestic, but those things are pretty sweet. And Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, Krishna is the ultimate goal of shelter. He's where you find shelter. And therefore, one should take shelter of Krishna, either for protection or for annihilation of his distress. And whenever we have to take protection, we should know that our protection must be a living force. Krishna is the supreme living entity, and since Krishna is the source of our generation, or the supreme father, no one can be a better friend than Krishna, nor can anyone be a better well-wisher. So this is sweet. Right? It's a little more, so even more than the being the sun and the moon and giving life to the vegetables and digestion. He's our shelter. He protects us. He's our protector. He's our friend and well-wisher. This is how it's put there. Nobody can be a better one. And so it's a little, again, more sweet. So he's all powerful and all pervasive, but he's really nice. He really is nice. And we like our friends, right? We like people that can protect us, right? So if we can understand that, right, we can begin to feel safe and protected. I say, like in Krishna's eternal embrace, if he's everywhere, right? We can feel, because this is one of the things that happens when we feel separate and small. We experience ourselves as small beings in a chaotic and oftentimes unfriendly, dangerous world. Right? That's one of the reasons why we think it would be better if we could have more and more power, right? Because the world is huge, we're very tiny, And it seems like, many times it seems like the world is hostile and we don't have the wherewithal to deal with it. And it seems to be out of control, right? It seems to be just chaos, right? It's happening, and we can't control it and we don't know if we can survive it. And so there's a real sense of fear, and there's an aloneness that's being part of being an embodied human. That when the soul enters into the material world and into the material body, we become our attention becomes absorbed into the world, into the body. We become so focused there that we no longer understand that as souls we are fully satisfied. We're Atmarama by nature. But because we're not paying attention to it, just like I said, if you're sitting in a movie theater and there's some movie that's so enrapturing, right? You'll feel all the emotions of the movie. You won't feel your own emotions. You'll be terrified. In the background, in the back of their minds, people know that the horror movies aren't real. but at the moment, it's like, I can't see, I can't watch, you know, or it's exciting and you get all excited because you're absorbed in it. And it's just, I mean, it's a flat screen, even if it's a big screen stuff, and you're getting all caught up in it. So here we have a three-dimensional, fully immersive, ongoing experience. The movie doesn't end so easily. And it's three-dimensional. It's not only just with your eyes, but it's with all of your senses. And so it draws our attention and become abivation, completely absorbed in that. And so therefore we become fixated on all these other things. And so we lose that internal satisfaction. And we become very, very attuned to our condition. We become really obsessed by it without understanding. And so and when we're connected with soul, we can understand how we're connected with others and we're connected with Krishna is easy. The higher level mode of goodness, you feel that. So we feel isolated. And so that creates a great fear in us. We lose those things. Mm-hmm. And so if we can begin to understand, how Krishna is as far as the basic principle in everything, how he's everywhere, how everything is resting on him, how he's present there especially in his mood as being a friend and a well-wisher and a helper, we can begin to have less fear. We can begin to feel protected, and we can feel that we have a shelter. The word surrender, like especially where it's used in the climax of the Gita in 1866, the word is sharanam, which means shelter. And sometimes Prabhupada uses that. He quotes that verse and uses the word shelter. So it's not a surrender where Krishna is the boss and you do what you're told, but it's that you can give up all this, so much of this other worries that you have, and you can feel safe and feel valued by Krishna. Right. The other thing we have is everything in the world tells us that we're nobodies. You have to prove your worth, but Krishna cares for us right now. So we have so many ways to feel secure and protected if we could do this, if we could understand something about Krishna and his all pervasiveness. We can begin to reverse that trend that's been happening, building up over many lifetimes. And so it gives us a possibility to feel safe, protected, and valued. And it's, which I mean, things we don't feel. And so, and from that position of feeling that way, from surrender, protection, safety, being cared for, we can do two things. We develop devotional qualities and become steady. Steadiness and devotional qualities come from that kind of situation where otherwise we're in at all times, we're in at least a low key panic. Unless we're not just outwardly freaking out, but underneath we don't know if we have value. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We're not in control of everything. We're weak and powerless, and it seems hostile. So there's trauma, man. It's like life is just trauma. Sometimes it's low key, sometimes it's right in our face. But that's our basic condition of being nervous and fearful. I mean, like sometimes people rescue little orphan kittens and stuff. When when you first get them, they're like, they're trying to fight you because they think you're going to hurt them. And then, they see they're protected. So we can be like that, little rescue kittens. And they finally realize, oh, these people are okay. They're feeding me and stuff. It's a whole different world for them. And so here, this is continuing again from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which talks about how one then can gain some actual devotional qualities from this understanding. So the sweetened, the really kind of reasonably heavily sweetened notion of Krishna's all pervasiveness. So Prabhupada says, Shama, equilibrium of mind is achieved by one who has concluded that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of everything. And when one can control his senses, that is called Shama. When one is ready to tolerate all kinds of sufferings to control the senses and keep the mind steady, that is called titiksha, or tolerance. And when one can control the urges of the tongue and genitals, that is called drishti. This is actually coming from a verse in the Bhagavatam, but I bet it reminds you of the nectar of instruction, first verse, right? A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, and the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world, right? And so that kind of peace that we get, that feeling of protection and being valued, and having this friend in Krishna, and Krishna being everywhere, it changes slowly. If we begin to integrate, it changes the way we can react to things in the world. See, because basically all of the other things we're doing is compensating. We're acting in a panic. We're compensating for this feeling of disconnection, this feeling of powerlessness, this feeling of worthlessness. And pride usually is just a reaction against that. I mean, like, in one sense, Prabhupada says we're trying to be God here. Like when we come to the material world, we want to compete with God. But, after some births, we begin to lower our expectations and aspirations. Like, I don't think too many of us came into this world and thought, I'm going to be God. You get beat up enough times and you kind of lower your standards. You hope you can be something at least. You want to be something, but the real grandiose ideas you usually get beaten out of you, and within some some levels of lifetimes, and you just hope to be something. That's what you want. And so we have all these things. All of the different material attachments and aversions ultimately trace to trying to compensate for this artificial experience. We find something that gives us some feeling of safety, or something that gives us some feelings of happiness, and we cling to that, right? Because at least for a moment, even though we know that all the material happinesses are temporary, but at least it's something. Right? What's our alternative? Our alternative is way down the line if we become Krishna conscious. So it's like, oh, what about my little comfort now? And we cling to that. It's dear to our hearts. You gotta, tear it out of your fingers. And then things that seem to cause us trouble, then we have these big aversions for that. They cause us so much trauma. And so we can't react. We react at least in a low-key panicked way in almost every part of our lives. And so how do you have these, have the tolerance and the control of the senses, right? Because the senses are seeking to compensate for the problem. They're looking for a solution. Where can I find some happiness, some security, some this, some that? And you don't want to tolerate because you've been beaten up too much. Why should we tolerate? We want to fight back and then take care of it. So what happens, is if we begin to realize, not only is Krishna present everywhere, but when he takes an interest in us, this also makes a big difference. Like when we take an interest in him and he becomes our friend, then things are not happening. Even they weren't happening randomly before. There was a lot of karmic things into it. We understand that karma is, controlling a lot of things. But when Krishna enters into our lives, when we welcome him in, he begins to take a lot of control over that. And we know early on in the experience of becoming a devotee of Krishna that the karma is removed, you know, pretty thoroughly, pretty quickly. Srila Prabhupada sometimes talks about the fan that's running and you unplug it so it kind of runs a little bit for a while, just of its own momentum. But then it's really the negative things that happen to you, according to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, once that's finished, it's either a result of our offenses or the trouble comes from Krishna himself because he's trying to educate us in some way. So it's a trouble, but it's given by Krishna for not as a punishment, but again, but as a help for us to let go of different attachments and aversions. So that our life becomes curated in some ways by Krishna. And so when that happens, then we look at the experiences differently. We don't, like the little kitten is terrified, when somebody comes, but then later on they feel secure. There ain't no new people come, they're even interested. So so we're all traumatized beings. So when somebody gives us trouble, it freaks us out because it resonates with all the other time we've had trouble. We feel unprotected, we feel unsafe, we feel like it's a terrible world, and we go nuts. But if we can feel the presence of Krishna, the kind presence of Krishna, the caring presence of Krishna, all these kind of things, just like somebody, there's people who are more secure and less secure, and the less secure people are more volatile. The people who are more traumatized are more volatile. We even on a day-to-day basis, right? If we wake up and sometimes you wake up and you just feel good, and things that might otherwise trouble you just kind of, oh, you don't worry about that. You don't worry about that. Somebody's a little grouchy and okay, they must be having a bad day. And it's not a big deal for you, And then someday you're just feeling terrible. You've got a terrible headache. And every little thing bothers you. We can even our own lives, we can see a shift, even just depending upon our moods, where we react to the same things in maybe even quite different ways. So if you kind of extrapolate from that and understand that what would happen if we really begin to understand, that what's happening is also under Krishna's control. It's coming to us out of his concern and friendship and care. And it's actually under controlled circumstances. We don't need to be so afraid as we think we have to. Right? Then it becomes, the way we do it becomes different. And then of course, when it goes deeper and we feel that we're valued by Krishna and we see other beings, and know that they're valued by Krishna, it allows us, again, there's boundaries with those people, like we talked about unconditional love the first time. But we can see, and it doesn't mean that we agree with, really bad behavior, or even any kind of bad behavior. It doesn't mean we have to agree with it or support it, but we see deeper, and we see that behind here is a suffering being, who's loved by Krishna. We still may have to love them from a distance. We have to have the proper boundaries, but it changes it. When we think we're just dealing with bad people who are just bad all the way, and why are they existing, and this kind of stuff, it's harder for us. So it begins to dampen down all of our wild emotional and mental swings of things, and so the mind becomes steady. It's satiksha, and then you feel that peace. Somebody in the mode of goodness doesn't have as many sensual desires and material desires. They have peace, right? And so that begins to happen. So that's why the material desires go down, the tolerance goes up, the feeling of connection goes up, all the things that are good. And so it's really, again, this feeling of connectedness with Krishna is a really fundamental part of that. And then I just have one more slide here. The third verse of the Shikshastakam. This is this, or no, I'm sorry. This is we did this one. This is the translation found in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. And according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this is representative of the stage of nishta, steadiness in devotional service. Really important issue where you can constantly remember Krishna and not forget him. And then as we'll see next time, that really helps us to leverage Krishna's all attractiveness, and we can always be conscious of Krishna. And that it's actually downhill. The process of sadhana starts to go more downhill. It's really uphill now when we're remembering and forgetting and remembering and remembering and forgetting and all this kind of stuff, and not feeling, as protected from by Krishna as we should, as we have a right to be too. And so, and Lord Chaitanya says the qualities listed in this verse simply intensify, and they're the basis, the basic qualities that take us all the way to prema. And so this is coming, this can't come. We can't reach that steadiness unless we can begin to integrate this notion of Krishna's presence. And this takes work. I think it's like it's not something we can just flip a switch and do this. We have to monitor ourselves, and we're gonna, we can't just, okay, Krishna's every place, but so many things will trigger us. And we won't say it out loud, but our mind says, this isn't Krishna. This has nothing to do with Krishna. No, he's not really here. He's not here. So then the fear comes up and everything comes up. So it's something I think we have to kind of focus on. As part of our internal cultivation is to remind ourselves about that. See if we can see it that way. And even great persons like Arjuna, can have their moments, right? Krishna took him out when he wants to go in between the armies. Krishna intentionally takes him in front of the people who are most dear to him. And so he basically says, "Okay, Arjuna, integrate this." It's just like, oh, this can't be. This is not right, and he has a meltdown. So but Prabhupada says it's interesting in the Light of the Bhagavat, there's a place in there where there's like a paragraph where he talks about how we have to be really strong in our sadhana and have, really be regulated. And Prabhupada does this sometimes. He slips in this sentence that seemed to be like a complete non sequitur. And he says, but it's not. He's giving some context of what he's saying there. And he says, but failure need not be detrimental, but rather may be the pillars of success. And so Prabhupada's acknowledging that it doesn't just happen that way. Now we're just going to be, we're just going to be perfect. It's by understanding where we're failing, right? What is triggering us? What is the situation that then we can, spend more time addressing it. The idea is and this also helps us not to be escapist type of devotees. This is really a call to being able to be present in the world, not being of it, right? Not feeling that it's my eternal place and my shelter, but that because Krishna is present, is what happens is, a lot of times, devotees will dissociate. We'll try to just have our little blissful feeling of Krishna consciousness, and hope we can just ride that. And try to not see anything else. It doesn't mean we want to put ourselves in the worst possible conditions, but we should be able to not have to walk around closing our eyes because, oh, this is Maya, because then we stay little midgets. We have to do that. So how can we actually integrate more and more? Prabhupada, he, of course, he was at that much higher level, but he took the steamship over here and came into the craziest place, one of the craziest places in the world. He was living in the artist in residence loft with all these crazy hippies and stuff, because he wanted, of course, his service was to help. He went right into the belly of the beast. And so really, we can't be, I said we have to judge carefully. We don't want to go to the worst possible places to start out with, but we should begin to start to be able to integrate our Krishna consciousness in more widely in our lives. So sometimes we want to escape off into bliss, dissociate, and this kind of stuff. And in that case, we can't integrate any further. So I think we really have to have to begin to understand this process that everything there is Krishna. It's coming also from Krishna. How can we handle things in the most Krishna conscious way possible? And if we're triggered, step back, analyze, and try to move forward, and to really try to integrate this into our lives, so we can feel more and more that more of the things we see, Krishna is present there. That I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm cared for, and that Krishna is really wonderful. And otherwise, it's going to be very difficult, because otherwise we have to forget when we see something. Oh, that's not Krishna. Right? Then we've forgotten him. So this to me is it was pretty clear that this is something that's really important to us. How can we, begin to really have realization? There's the theory, and then there's the integration and realization. And it's learned by every instance. Like I know I've tried this, right, where you kind of get all blissed out, or you think, okay, I'm going to see everything as Krishna. It's like almost like you kind of walk around with like this little protective bubble, of Krishna conscious around you, and then you know inevitably you meet somebody who gives you trouble, and the bubble bursts. So you can't. It's something that has to be real. We have to be able to be present, fully present in our dealings, and be able to be Krishna conscious. We can't just have a little protective bubble, because it keeps getting popped. You know. So how can we begin to see more and more that here other people are beloved of Krishna? I said, doesn't mean we treat them all the same. We understand these things. That there are different people, that people are conditioned in different ways, and we do have to we want their welfare. We don't want their success, but their welfare. You know, so that's the thing. So anyway, so is other comments and questions on this? We're going to try to focus a little more on the sweetness next time. So does it make sense? Or you think I'm out of my head here? Or what? Is it okay? All right. Well, the next time that'll be the final edition here of this the 4 parts, and we'll start looking a little bit more at the sweetness, as I think we can up the sweetness um, quite a bit. There's a lot more to about Krishna that we haven't covered, and so the sweeter it gets, and the more that we can feel the presence of Krishna, the better, and we can begin to not only get steadiness, but then you start to get ruchi and other kinds of things like that. You know and because it's when you start feeling intense gratitude, and then just appreciation for Krishna, how wonderful he is, then there's a just when somebody is dear to you. Prabhupada mentioned this in 26 Second Avenue. It was interesting. He talked about spontaneity in devotional service. And first he said, like you have a lover. And then he says, forget that. He said, he realized that's maybe not the best example. He said, just like a mother, he says, wants to do something for her child. He called himself. He said, wait, no, that's not the right example. And, but he said, just like a mother, you know, Milky wants to do something for their child. So when the understanding of Krishna's sweetness, comes more intensely, then it's like there's an eagerness to do something. It's even beyond gratitude. It's like you need to. Wow, this is so wonderful that you just enlivened to do it. And then you get this. That's the stage of ruchi, which can deepen into asakti, which is like addiction, right? And so I think that but the basis of the steadiness is this understanding of Krishna's all pervasiveness. And without that, you can't be steady. And if you can't be steady, then you can't be conscious of Krishna continuously enough to let the sweetness really enter in. So when you get at that place of steadiness, you can begin to leverage Krishna's all attractiveness. You can keep, because when you turn off the light and turn on the light, turn off the light, turn on the light, it's just you kind of stay at the same spot. But if the light stays on, and you can begin to think more about Krishna and understand more about him, and encounter him more, then it's like, ooh. Because what's happening also, in Krishna consciousness, it's not just our consciousness of Krishna, but also we're awakening. The soul is awakening. Like when in the famous higher taste verse, the first chapters of the Gita are not all exclusively bhakti. Prabhupada, he wanted us to see them in the bhakti way because he thought that none of this other stuff is useful for us. But Baladev Vidyabhushan, he talks about the higher taste as being an experience of Atma for those who are more yogis and karma yogis and things, jnana yogis, that they can experience a higher taste by experiencing soul. Not as intense as the higher taste with its Krishna, but you can. So what's happening actually is we're awakening, our souls are awakening when we're coming into contact with Krishna. So two things are happening. Not only are we coming into contact with Krishna, but our own true selves are beginning to wake up and not be so absorbed. And so that energizes us and gives us more capabilities. We're becoming more. And but that takes that more continuous consciousness. And so it really seems that this integration it's not pleasant and not easy, but that's worth our efforts to really work on integrating Krishna's omnipresence. And that's really one of the things we need to do to reach the place of steadiness and devotional service. After which it's a downhill, kind of downhill. You start catching Krishna's all attractiveness, and it becomes easier and easier and easier. Getting over that hump is the biggest problem that we have. All right. Well, I appreciate you showing up and taking your valuable time. And we'll be back here at the same time, same cyberspace next time, and then we'll be concluded. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.